I think I've made it quite clear that I despise Carol Danvers, or Captain Marvel. Although I think calling her that is an insult to every other Captain Marvel ever. Anyway, I hate her with a burning passion. Not as much as X-23, but she's definitely up there. Before anybody says, "Oh, that's just because you hate Brie Larson," or anything of that equivalent, which is something I have been told in real life, no, you're wrong. I've hated her since 2012, since she became Captain Marvel. That's over 5 years ago. I only started really getting into American comics around that sort of time, give or take a few years, but I've pretty much hated her ever since her concept was introduced to me. The reason why is because she's an asshole, yet is portrayed as a hero. Now, don't get me wrong, mean, rude, horrible characters are usually my favourite characters. But those characters who are horrible know they're bad and just own it. For example, Sabretooth is known as a monster and he knows he's a monster and he just loves it. He's a villain, a cannibal, a murderer, and so much worse. And everybody else around him knows this and hates him for it. But Carol? Nah, everybody loves her despite her being a shitty person. Try to get Miles Morales, a child, killed for something he hadn't done yet based on a dodgy fortune teller type character? That's fine, don't worry about it. She's rude to everybody and only acts on self-interest. Everybody loves her, she's brilliant. Looks like a man, acts like a man, but isn't a man and hates men. Such a feminist icon, a role model for young girls to love. Yeah, no, fuck you. She's a wannabe Superman with the emotional depth of a burnt scrap of crispy bacon. She looks ugly and has an ugly personality. I've been keeping up with the comics, not buying them, mind you. I'm not spending money on a fraud superhero. And her comic book title has been rebooted like a dozen times. Get a clue, Marvel? Nobody wants to read her bloody comics. Just cancel it already. She will never become the face of Marvel. It will always be Captain America or Spider-Man. Most usually Spider-Man. Look, if you like Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers the character, fine, whatever, you can like her. But I hate her, so I made a redesign of her. I made a version of Carol Danvers that if I was to get her book and become a writer or the artist, this is how I would draw and write her, if that ever did become the case. Not that it ever will, because I don't have the skills for it, but it's more of a what-if situation. First of all, I would give Carol her old Miss Marvel costume and give it a Captain Marvel color palette. We're not trying to be original here, we're just redesigning. Now, at the moment, she's a bland, arrogant character that for some reason everybody in the comics loves and respects despite her not deserving any of it. Not to mention the writers at Marvel shoving her down our throats. Carol's story is actually really boring and nothing new when it comes to the comics. I hate legacy characters, and I don't think any character should take another's mantle, with some minor exceptions like The Flash or Robin. But usually I prefer for a person to have their own identity rather than... My flatmates are being really noisy. Anyway, usually I'd rather a character be their own person than somebody else's identity, but I think that's a personal preference. Let's work with her story. Breaking it down, it goes like this. She's an officer in the United States Air Force and a security chief of a restricted military base. She gets caught in an explosion of a Kree-created device who were trying to get close to Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel, but he saves her. Still, she gets serious injuries. She got her powers from that situation. Quoting the Marvel website, during a battle between the heroic Mar-Vell and his rival Yon-Rogg, Carol was exposed to the Psych-Magnetron, a Kree device that could make imagination into reality. Carol subconsciously envied Mar-Vell's powers, and the machine responded to those desires by rewriting her DNA to make her a human/Kree hybrid with abilities similar to his. Look, I'm not going to pretend that I know fuck all of Carol Danvers because I'm no expert. I know the basics, but nothing earlier than the 2010s, mainly because I don't care and she sucks. For the longest time, she was maybe a D-list hero as far as I can tell, and was fairly liked yet barely cared for. She had a niche fanbase, but nothing that really made her stand out. Again, only as far as I've been able to research. I have glanced over some of her comics online, read her wiki page, and honestly, the most interesting thing that she has got is that she became pregnant by a guy from an alternate universe called Marcus, and that the son she gave birth to once she came back to her Earth was that Earth's version of Marcus. It's weird, but fascinating. Anyway, point is, there's nothing in her story that's particularly interesting. But if I did get her book, I would definitely give her imposter syndrome. I mean, anything she's ever gotten has been because of the original Marvel. Heck, she's not even the first female Captain Marvel. Monica Rambeau was before her. There are multiple Captain Marvels. I would definitely give Carol some form of pressure to be like the previous Captain Marvels. People would have an expectation of her. The original Avengers remember Marvel, who died, and would expect her to respect his name now that she has taken it. Monica Rambeau led the Avengers for some time, so Captain Marvel would have rather large shoes to fill. So imposter syndrome is definitely a big must. A bit cliche, yes, and definitely overdone, but sometimes going back to basics is the best course of action to take with these characters, especially like ones like Carol Danvers. If I was given Captain Marvel as she is now, I would definitely make her have nightmares about Marvel tormenting her for having turned evil for a bit, for all her mistakes, and not trying to be a better person and to better herself. Because of this, she can't sleep, and it's causing her to mess up in missions and snap at others. Of course, the others notice this. Doctor Strange tries to find some anomalies in her brain, maybe brainwashing or a spell, but no, there's nothing. Iron Man, who helped Carol when she had a drinking problem, suggests she takes a break from the Avengers, have some alone time and reflect on herself. Of course, Carol would fight this because she doesn't want to stop working, but the others would agree with Iron Man. Carol is powerful, not the most powerful, mind you, and having her mess up in a mission would be bad for everybody. So she'd go home and reflect on herself. I'd concentrate a bit on her mental struggles and her unwillingness to admit that she had moments of being wrong and that she's not perfect and does actually need to improve as a human being. Insomnia is hitting her strong to the point that she's seeing hallucinations of Marvel even when she's awake. I then make a new villain for her that's trying to find her to kill her. I haven't thought about who they would be or why, but it would probably be someone who is dissatisfied with her work. Probably a villain like Stain from My Hero Academia, who only wants true genuine heroes to be in the world and doesn't think Carol is a true hero. Anyway, Carol would jump to the occasion to blow off some steam, but lacking sleep, her powers would be a mess, so she'd be beaten to a pulp. Thankfully, She-Hulk and probably Iron Man or somebody she's friends with would come to her help and chase the villain away. She'd have to go into a medically induced coma because of her injuries. There she would face the Marvel hallucination. I would make her go on a mindfuck trip where she has to fight her past memories and come to terms that she made mistakes. Eventually, she'd have to beat her current arrogant self, where she'd realize that she's actually a horrible person. Of course, she'd be beaten by that nasty version of herself, showing just how much she has fallen from when she was Miss Marvel or Warbird. At this point, Carol would wake up with a horrible start from her coma, most likely crying and in a hysteria. Tony would definitely be there, and Carol would be apologizing over and over again for her mistakes, especially in Civil War II. This would lead her to getting psychiatric help. That, anyway, is how I would start my run with Captain Marvel. Carol getting a well-deserved beating from reality and a slap in the face. I thought all of this at the top of my head, and honestly haven't worked on the idea any more than what you have heard. But I would definitely turn Carol from a wannabe legacy character into her own superhero. Maybe even give her a different name, like, instead of Captain Marvel, she could be called, I don't know, Marvelous or Lady Marvel, Madam Marvel. Or even give her a brand new name like, I don't know, Damsel Danger or Miss Miracle. Basically, I would just make her grow into a genuinely good and well-loved person who deserves the praise she gets. It would definitely be a story about self-improvement and admitting that we're not perfect, even when we're surrounded by yes men. But me working at Marvel anytime soon probably ain't gonna happen, because I want to write and draw actual stories and characters, not political propaganda in form of art. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think about my idea and what you think of Carol's redesign. Thanks for watching. Bye bye!